Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are doing our final NBA Division season preview, talking about the Northwest Division, where we have saved the best for last because we have your reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets here. Logan, what are you expecting for them as they try to run it back this year?
I'm expecting the Nuggets to be the number one seed in the West in the regular season. I have them going 54-28. I think it's going to be an uber competitive West. That's why I don't have them winning more games. I think they're more talented than that. And, you know, something we discuss with every team, Carson, in the offseason is if you don't get better, well, you got worse, because every other team is adding great talents around the league. They're improving, and the Nuggets didn't really, improve all that much on paper. They lose a very important piece to their championship recipe in Bruce Brown. He was super imperative off the bench as a defender, as a tertiary and secondary ball handler, as a spot-up shooter, as a cutter. He's just a really valuable asset that can do a little bit of everything. But I think they did a good job and can supplement a lot of his value with some of these role players. Julian Strawther is the first guy that I point to. He was a 99th percentile spot-up player last season. That's an invaluable asset to have alongside guys like Jokic, MPJ, Jamal Murray, just the added floor spacing and ability to attack, closeouts, to be super wet off the catch, to, use him in handoffs and spot-up situations. It's just a really invaluable weapon to add here in Denver. I think that Christian Braun is going to step up and play a bigger role this season. Last year, played sparingly. They played him when they needed him. He was in there basically as a hustle guy, a defender, a spot-up guy. I think Brown's got a lot more room for improvement in terms of a little bit of creation. Don't get me wrong. He's not going to be a ball handler like Bruce Brown, but he's going to be a dogged defender, a guy that you can put on the point of attack, and a guy that you can have off ball. And I think he's going to add some of that, a little bit of playmaking, not messing up the flow of the offense. He can attack closeouts. He's a really good guy to have off ball. So, they don't have Bruce Brown, but I think there's guys that can supplement his value. And then you look at the overall recipe for the Nuggets, and I think it's probably the most solid that you can bank on for next season in terms of reliability. When you have Nikola Jokic, that fixes a lot of issues. He's a generational talent. He's one of the best players in basketball history. And when he is your foundation, well, he can cover up for a lot of the pieces around you. But I still think that this is a top two. I think this is the number one duo in basketball, Carson, him and Jamal Murray. And I mean that in terms of how they complement each other, right? I think you can point at individual duos and maybe they're more talented. Maybe you prefer LeBron and AD with their ceiling. Maybe you prefer Paul George and Kawhi Leonard because you're kind of wacky. Maybe you like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, right? Maybe you like Giannis and Dame. Giannis and Dame is probably the best comp or best competition for them. But in terms of how they complement each other, Jokic and Jamal Murray are like peanut butter and jelly, man. They just go together. They work so well together because he's a great pull-up jump shooter. And so I just think the formula is super reliable. Every one of your starters is returning. You've got a solid bench, and you've got the best player and arguably the best duo in basketball returning to your team. It's just a rock-solid recipe that you can bank on. And I just don't see the Nuggets falling off a cliff or not being title contenders this season. They're going to be back in the mix again this season. And for a lot of people, I know they're the favorite out west. For me, the Lakers are my favorite out west. I think they improved massively. I think that if LeBron and AD can reach that upper level, and if they can defend to an average level against the Nuggets, because that's the issue, man. The Nuggets offense just doesn't stop coming at you, and that's their biggest distinct advantage over every other team in the NBA. So the Nuggets aren't my title favorite. They're probably 2 or 3 for me, contending with the Bucks, with the Celtics. I think, the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Lakers all got a lot better this season. But the Nuggets have the best player on planet Earth, and that matters something. They returned all their starters. So I really like the Nuggets this year. I think they have as dependable as a formula as any other team in the NBA.
Absolutely. I still feel like they're clearly the favorite out west to me, and I am high on the Lakers, but we just had this conversation. I would need to see more consistently dominant top 10 night in, night out level play from both LeBron and AD. I do believe that offense is improved. I think that team has a higher ceiling than last year, but they need those two to be reliably great offensively to really drive that half-court offense to the level it needs to be at to compete with the Nuggets, because this offense doesn't stop, as you said, and it is one of the most complete starting fives in recent memory, such an elite complementary group. You talk about how Murray and Jokic complement each other so beautifully. That's true of this entire group. You have the elite pick and roll shot maker and a good pick and roll playmaker in Murray, who benefits greatly from Jokic's dominance as a screener, but also obviously the gravity that he occupies as a roller, as a popper. You have two elite wing shooters in KCP and MPJ, who is one of the best movement shooters, one of the best contested shot makers in the NBA. You have the elite athletic rim finisher in Aaron Gordon, who played at such a high level, obviously also a really high level two-way guy, but looking at just the synergy offensively, that's where they're unrivaled. That's why they just posted the highest offensive rating in a playoff run since the Showtime Lakers. That is what makes them the reigning NBA champions. They reached a high level defensively, but it's this historically great machine of an offense. And the driving force behind that all is the best player alive, Nikola Jokic. I believe one of the handful of the greatest offensive players we have ever seen. And it is out of any action. It's an elite transition offense. They were 97th percentile there. But again, they have excellent spot-up shooting. They have excellent off-ball cutting and movement, and that is consistently rewarded by the best passer in basketball. They can dominate out of handoffs with the pull-up shooting you get and how much space Jokic eats up. They just don't stop. They have the best post scorer and playmaker in basketball. So nobody is going to take that away. We have seen that. I think this is the best offense in basketball and will be again this year, and maybe not in terms of regular season offensive rating, but they're going to be damn close to that. And when it comes to playoff time, this will be the best offense. Nobody has this combination of dominance out of every action, of the shooting ceiling, of the unstoppable scoring that you get from Jokic when he's just working his way into the interior over and over again, that level of touch shot making, and a dynamic guard to pair with him like Jamal Murray. His starting five last year was so good. They have a net rating of +8 in the regular season and almost +10 in the playoffs. And they have a lot of continuity here. They basically just have to run it back from last year when you're talking about that starting five. The Bruce Brown loss does matter. And it's enough of a concern to where right now I have the Nuggets slightly as my second favorite for the title compared to the Bucks. I actually do think that the Bucks have the best duo in basketball right now. Maybe we need to see it realized, but you talk about the complementary skill sets. Jokic and Jamal complement each other perfectly offensively, but I think Dame and Giannis cover up for each other's weaknesses on both sides of the ball in a really unique way. Dame as that great over-the-top shot maker, pick and roll creator, truly dominant half-court offensive player in crunch time, which Giannis can't always be, and then Giannis as that great backline defender, just versatile monster. When we've historically seen a lot of Dame's teams struggle to defend, he hasn't had that level of defense behind him in the front court, and he himself is going to struggle a bit. So those guys are both special and they fit together perfectly. But Jokic to me is the best player alive. ESPN came out with their NBA rank, which I think sucked. And Giannis over Jokic wasn't the biggest problem on it, because I think that's what a lot of people would have said going into this past playoff run. And I do still think that it's reasonably close between the two of them because of Giannis's two-way dominance. But I don't know who else on the planet in the history of basketball could come off of one of the 10 best individual runs ever. The man averaged 30, 13.5, and 9.5 on 63% true shooting in a title run, facing some of the best defensive bigs in basketball, massacring all of them with all-time scoring and playmaking, and not be acknowledged as the best player alive. Like, that to me is just so peculiar. And again, I throw that whole list in the trash because it sucked, but that did feel a bit disrespectful. So they got a great formula, but the depth is a question mark. I really do like Christian Braun's shooting and athleticism and effort. We saw him make a bunch of those gutsy hustle plays. He's a dog, man. He really is, and he always has been. But I don't believe he's the caliber of all-around basketball player that Bruce Brown is. I really don't think he's all that close, and it was a very up-and-down postseason for him last year. I expect him to take a step forward, but in terms of that bench ball handling, he's not going to bring that. He's not going to bring the positional rebounding. I mean, Bruce, the playmaking, he is a really unique and valuable role player, and they will miss him. But like you said, they sort of try to supplement it through some different avenues. Jalen Pickett is the guy who I look at as being that potential bench ball handler. They have Reggie Jackson. Reggie will probably play more than Pickett, but Pickett has the ability to consistently get to his spots out of pick and roll, really work his way to that intermediate range, and he's got a good floater game. But I do have some issues with him. He definitely does strangle the pace. I don't love his pull-up shooting. So, again, I'm not sure how much he figures into things as a rookie. Strother, to me, is the guy you look at and you say, all right, that shooting off spot-ups, off handoffs, that translates. His ability to defend, that translates. He's an immediate rotation guy. I do believe in him. Hunter Tyson, the other rookie, brings spot-up shooting at good size. I'm not sure how much he plays. So I thought they did a solid job of trying to rebuild some of those bench pieces through the draft. And then the other young, intriguing guy who you look at is Peyton Watson, who has the flashes of the athleticism, of the defensive upside. What we really need to see from him consistently is the shot. And he just hasn't proven that he can be an impact rotation guy in a contending situation like this. Zeke Najee's another guy who is going to have to probably play some minutes as a backup big. And the Nuggets didn't really have a backup big last year. It was basically Uncle Jeff, who wasn't playing all that well. So their formula last year was elite top six. Their deep bench wasn't good. It was just good enough for them to scrape by. And so I don't look at this as a huge red flag that I don't feel super good about spots 6 through 8 on this roster. But it is enough for me to bump them just below the Bucks when I look at how much that team has improved, how dominant their two-way ceiling is. But nobody else has an offensive formula like this with elite role players as your 3rd through 5th best players, and they have the best player alive. So to me, they are still the favorite out west. It's just so dependably great, and that was the theme throughout the entire postseason. There were teams that on certain nights could reach these ceilings. If it was the Lakers, if it was the Celtics, we're like, oh my God, everything is humming on both sides of the ball. Who was it that night in, night out, played efficient, mistake-free basketball, busted their asses on both sides of the floor, had the elite reliable shooting, had the most unstoppable offensive engine in basketball? It was the Nuggets, and that's why they cruised to the title.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The consistency was the difference maker. Night to night, the Nuggets brought it in a different way that other teams didn't. I want to ask you, you talk about the bench and how you're worried about certain roles. What do you think is the biggest need off this bench? What specific role off the bench are you most concerned about with the Nuggets?
Well, I would like to see some bench creation because I think that Bruce was able to step up as a ball handler, and he did versatile things. Like you said, it could be as a cutter, it could be as a spot-up shooter. He was so good in transition. He could make the most pronounced impact with his defense and rebounding at times. But I would like to see somebody better than Reggie Jackson step up there. And yeah, they could try to stagger the minutes and have Jamal always run with the bench units. And I think that when it comes playoff time, they should have Jamal out there a lot with the bench units just to have a really high-level offensive player out there, period. But during the regular season, I can see them struggling with that. And I don't want them to be solely reliant on Jamal. I'm not freaking out about the lack of a quality backup big because they didn't have that last year. It would be nice if they had a guy who could bring a bit more of that athleticism and rim protection, but they didn't need it to just win a title. So I think in terms of wings, they're solid, and DeAndre Jordan is not that guy, as I think we can all say with a good deal of confidence. I'm not super concerned about it, but they have taken a step down because Bruce was really good, and I don't think they fully replaced that value.
Do you think the Lakers are the best threat to the Nuggets out west?
I do, because I think that they're the best defensive team in the league to me. And again, the Nuggets were able to shred them last year, but I think they would have done that to anybody. I think the Lakers, with their length and their size and their physicality on the interior, they can do as good a job as anybody. And then offensively, they have this ability to really pressure the paint and to repeatedly force Jokic to work defensively. And then they have now the improved spot-up shooting and perimeter skill to have a little bit more firepower to reach a more dynamic ceiling there. I think that they have the highest all-around ceiling in the West outside of the Nuggets, because if you're just going to try to beat Denver in a straight-up shootout, good luck. Like, the Suns, I don't think that they can even reach the defensive ceiling that the Nuggets do. And the formula that is so reliable, the shots created by Jokic and the shot making around him, right, the ability to just dominate the paint and dominate from beyond the arc that they have night in, night out, I would take that over the Suns having some more sketchy spot-up shooting in their starting five, being reliant on the pull-up mid-range shooting versus the rim pressuring. The Nuggets is just so automatic. It's so night in, night out. So if anybody's going to do it, it's probably going to have to be a team that can reach that elite two-way ceiling. And that's what, to me, Milwaukee can do. That's a team with a great defensive front court that also has really good shooting personnel, that has this hyper-athletic, dominant paint pressuring force in Giannis, that has multiple real pull-up shot makers. That's a really great all-around basketball team, and that's why they're my slight favorite. But it is tough to pick anybody over Denver, even with the loss of Bruce Brown, just because of how damn good they were so consistently last year. That was an awesome playoff run. And I've said it before, I think that's an upper echelon champion of this century, and nobody should even attempt to diminish what they did. You can't talk about the seeding of their opponents because the Lakers were playing like a top 2 team in the West. The Heat, yeah, they were at a talent deficit, but look at who they had just beaten. That was a great Nuggets team, and I think it's going to be a great Nuggets team again. Maybe just a little bit of a step back. Okay, who do you have next in this division, Logan?
Number 2 in this division is maybe the team I'm most excited to watch this upcoming season. That is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I have them going 47-35. And my big question, a couple of big questions. My first big question is, can SGA replicate what he did last season? SGA took that bona fide superstar leap where he is a bona fide top 10 player, fringe top 10 guy in the NBA, depending on your rankings. I would have SGA as a top 10 guy. I think he's there. I just think that...
Well, let me just ask you something.
Yeah.
Because I think that we both have had this tendency to talk about dudes who are fringe top 10 and really solidly top 15 as top 10. Who are you bumping out to make way for SGA? Because, you referred to LeBron as a top 10 player last show, and I was thinking about this. I'm not sure that I would say LeBron is a top 10 player right now. I think that he has that ceiling on any given night. I know. But in terms of consistent production, I would have to bump him out. Somebody's got to go on these lists.
LeBron, maybe. I know people aren't going to like this, and you're probably not going to like this either. I know when he's fully healthy, he's there. I would not have Kawhi in my top 10. I think availability is
that's fair,
a massive concern, and so because of that, I wouldn't have him there. We should do this. We should do this as a show, Carson. We should do a top 10 players at some point.
All right.
I don't know how early on.
But he's dodging the question. Would you rather have SGA or Devin Booker? Wow. That is a man in agony. I just think this is an interesting conversation because there's a real divide on SGA, it feels, where there are those who say this man is God's gift to the earth and is a top 8 player.
That one.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm certainly more aligned with that side. I think the people who try to discredit him, who call him a free throw merchant, who talk about team success, you're not watching one of the most dominant scorers in basketball today. The guy is an artist. He has a level of body control, of balance, of skilled shot making, of change and pace. He dominates the painted area in a really unique way for a guard. All I'm saying is there's only 10 dudes who can be top 10. And I think SGA is maybe just outside in the 11 or 12 range for me.
You're right, and I would probably take D-Book. That's a real conversation for me, though. I want to be clear about that. That is a really close conversation, and we just haven't seen SGA do it on the biggest stage. We saw D-Book do it in the playoffs. I've seen him go on these torrid runs that are just seemingly unreplicable. I also think that he's marginally probably a better playmaker and a better defender at this point in his career. But
you think Book's a better defender than SGA?
Probably slightly right now. It's close. SGA is a freaking beast, though, man. SGA is one of my favorite guys to watch in all of basketball. Number 1 and number 2 for me. I don't know if I can go with that. Some of my top 5 favorite guys: Brunson, SGA, Curry, Jokic, and probably Foxy. Brunson and SGA are awesome, though, man. They're just the way they play, man. This
guy
so
somehow
sick.
found a way to talk about Jalen Brunson.
Sorry, I bring him up every show.
Nobody's talking about Jalen Brunson, but he is the man.
Last season, SGA put up 31-6-5 on nearly 63% true shooting. It's the 6th most efficient 31-point-per-game season ever. 50% of his shots came in the mid-range, 40% shots came at the rim, and that's what I really love about SGA's game is how versatile, how dynamic he can be. Those are the truly dominant guys that you can't take away in the playoffs. That was a fundamental basis of your take about Jason Tatum, right? He can lull himself into taking pull-up threes and really just not be a dynamic player. The guys like SGA, like Jalen Brunson, the guys that get into that mid-range, that can get into the rim, that area, they're super dynamic and they're just way harder to guard, right? Tatum can be predictable. That makes him easier to guard. SGA's not like that. And he made 46% of his mid-range attempts. He made 64% of his at-rim attempts. That's not a great number, but it's a good one. But he was an immaculate pull-up jump shooter last season. He shot 47% on pull-ups, 43% on step-backs, 45% on fadeaways. We talked about this all last year. So good at using his body and his arms to create space. He's really physical, man. He's got great footwork. He's elite at drawing fouls in contact. He shot nearly 11 free throws a game last season. He was fouled on nearly 20% of his shots. That's in the 100 percentile of NBA players. I mean, I think when you're looking at complete offensive players, he's top 10. And I think, even though we haven't seen it yet, I think SGA has got a game that directly translates to the playoffs.
I agree.
So, boom, you've got a top 10 guy on the offensive side of the ball. On the other side of the ball, and on offense too, is a guy that I think completely unlocks this Thunder team ceiling, and that is Chet Holmgren. I think he completely unlocks this team. On offense, you've got a great roll man and a pick and popper. I think he adds a vertical dynamic to the offense. You see it, man. I mean, just if they're not paying attention, look, Chet may not look like a crazy athlete. That kid's got bounce. When that angle is there, he can take you and drive and bang oops. He yammed on Zach Collins during preseason, just a nasty dunk. He's a good spot-up player. He shot 39% from deep in his final season at Gonzaga. He's really going to stretch the floor. He can attack closeouts. He can initiate from the perimeter. It's not like a Christian Wood, right, where he can, attack closeouts and go to the rim and just shoot. Chet can legitimately create out of those opportunities too, but his biggest impact is going to be defensively. He's 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan, and that was the only area where the Thunder really lacked last season, was on the interior in terms of rebounding and in terms of really protecting the rim. Chet's going to do that from day one. I think he's going to average probably over a block a game, maybe over a block and a half a game if he's really balling. Yeah, I want to say 2, but I don't know if that's unpredictable or too high.
I think he will. I mean, he was a not historically productive shot blocker in college, but one of the best shot blocking prospects. And honestly, he pretty much was. He just happened to play in the same year as Walker Kessler, who was a slightly more historically productive shot blocker. But the length, the timing, the instincts, the amount of ground that he can cover, it's unbelievable. He is going to be a great shot blocker from the jump.
Yeah, the positioning too. Yeah. I didn't want to get overzealous or overestimate his abilities, but I think 1.5 blocks per game or something like that is
easy,
definitely doable. And again, opponents versus OKC, they were number 1 in total rebounding. That's a huge swing factor here. I mean, Chet gives them an interior presence that can legitimately protect the rim. He gives them size and length and rebounding on the inside. Those are the biggest holes for the Thunder last season. When you have a bona fide offensive superstar who can create shots and consistently drop 30 a night regardless of who he's playing, okay, we got a above league average offense. I think they're going to be an above league average defense. I think they're going to be fighting to be a top 10 unit on both sides of the ball. And so I've got them winning 47 games, and they're going to be my 5 or 6 seed, depending on how the seeding shakes out. I have them tied with the Grizzlies in terms of same record, but Chet unlocks this team. They need a number 2, right? It's always tough, Carson, when you have these really dynamic number 1s, like we talked about it with Ja Morant, right? Ja needs another co-host on offense that can help him. He's got Triple J that ups the defense, and Chet's going to do that on defense too, but he brings a completely other dynamic offensively too. I just think that you've got your duo. You've got your duo for the future in SGA and Chet, and I think we're going to see it in year 1. It is going to pay massive dividends. And I think the Thunder are not only going to be a playoff team, they're going to be a damn tough out every single night and in the playoffs. I'm going to talk about some of the other guys that I like on this roster, but it starts with Chet and SGA, and I think this is going to be one of the best duos in the NBA for years to come.
It is a foundational duo, and you have your anchor on both sides of the floor and 2 dudes who are both pretty damn good on the side of the ball that is not like their ultimate strength. we did our rankings in the offseason of the top 10 guys 25 and under we would want to build around. I had Shai 4 and I had Chet 6. I am that much of a believer in Chet Holmgren. I said that at the time he was the best prospect that I had ever been able to competently evaluate. Now Wemby has surpassed him because he's just sort of like Chet on steroids. But I think he is going to have a pronounced impact immediately. You mentioned what he can do as a defensive anchor. The Thunder already had an incredibly impressive defensive foundation for a team this young last year. They were the number 13 defense in basketball. That's legit given how crazy young their core is. And it's because they had tons of length. They had versatile multi-positional defenders. They had some really good point of attack guys. And they played their asses off. If you look at all the hustle stats, 7th in deflections, 4th in loose balls recovered, by far number 1 in charges taken, lapping the rest of the league, number 3 in shots contested. The one thing they were lacking was a high-end interior presence. They struggled on the boards. They were 28th in defensive rebound percentage. A lot of times they didn't even play a real big, and they didn't have that high-end rim protector. Say what you want about Chet. Yeah, I mean, he still needs to fill out, and he doesn't have a great frame to add muscle, but sure, Giannis coming downhill one-on-one is going to give him trouble. But when you were talking about his job as a pick-and-roll defender, as a help defender, he is going to be damn good off the bat. I do truly believe that based on what we've seen from him in preseason. He's immediately going to elevate them, and that's a rare thing to have from a rookie, but he has the skill set and he has the hole to fill here. And you saw some moments like going up against Dame. He's playing drop and he is still long enough with that 7'6" wingspan to legitimately affect those pull-up jumpers. Think about what you saw in Dame's first preseason game, right? He's getting trapped, he's getting blitzed out of pick and roll, anything to take away those pull-up jumpers. Chet, it's not a deep drop, but he's sitting there around the free throw line, maybe a step higher, and he's able to contest those shots. He had an incredible block on a Dame step back. Like, he guards well in space, but then his timing, his instincts, his length as a shot blocker so remarkable that he can recover so effectively. And you pair that with the point of attack defense from Dort, the defensive playmaking of SGA, that is a real defensive core. I do think they will be a top 10 defense. And offensively, Chet is the perfect complementary piece. And that's what I've always said. He's not the next Kevin Durant. Everybody wants to name the next Kevin Durant. I'll believe that there is one when I see it. But what he's always been is a skilled big man who is a super efficient pick and roll finisher, a massive log target around the rim, a damn good pick and pop shooter who, yeah, can occasionally get himself a shot off the bounce. It's not the foundation of his game, but he can do it. He can attack closeouts. He's comfortable putting the ball on the floor, and he is a really good passer for his age and position. And he plays aggressive, man. That's something I love about Chet. He's eaten up free throws in summer league, in preseason. Regardless of his frame, he's willing to play with physicality, and that's awesome. He shot 5 of 9 on threes in preseason. He is just going to be insane. And this duo is going to be insane because Shai is an elite basketball player. Whether you think he's top 10 or you think he's top 12 or you think he's top 15, nobody can guard him. Like, the man is as slippery as they come. He is such a versatile shot maker. The change in pace is so lethal. And right as you think, oh my God, he's about to beat me with a drive, he kills you with a short mid-range pull-up, or he uses his physicality to bounce off you for that lethal little turnaround or a mid-range step back. I mean, he is just so elite as a shot maker in the paint, and then he's an elite transition player with that full court speed. He's even like killer attacking mismatches out of the post. I think he was like a 90th percentile post scorer. He's got a beautiful turnaround there. He's got good footwork. He's got a size advantage over a lot of dudes. Good playmaker, good defender. Regardless of if he's top 10, that may be pushing it, but night in, night out, he's one of the 10 most reliable dudes in basketball, I would say. He's more reliably great than LeBron right now. He's more reliably great than AD. Those guys both, to me, have higher ceilings in a single game, but he's more reliable. He's more dominant in a regular season setting than Jimmy Butler. And like you said, I don't see why his game wouldn't translate to the playoffs because there's nothing predictable about it. It's not gimmicky. People key in on the free throw rate. The primary reason for that is that he first of all, pressures the hell out of the rim, and he's wildly unpredictable. He's herky-jerky. He's spinning all the time. He's got lethal fakes. Like, he legitimately draws a ton of fouls. Maybe his free throw rate drops by a little bit, but this isn't James Harden we're talking about here. This isn't just step backs and foul baiting. This is a very versatile shot maker who gets to the paint consistently, and when you can do that, that translates better than anything else. So I think the free throw thing is a bit overplayed. I think, like you said, that is a great duo for the future. To me, the most intriguing in the league right now when we're talking about long-term, right? Not versus Dame and Giannis right now. Shout out Paolo and Franz. I think that these two have a different level in terms of their collective ceiling. But it is a really good supporting cast. Jalen Williams, we raved about in the home stretch last year, put up 19, 5, and 4 on 64% true shooting post-All-Star break. Super versatile offensive player, good pick and roll playmaker, good athlete who can pressure the rim, good spot up shooter, smart cutter, going to defend at a high level. I think he's already like a damn good third option. How do you feel about the entirety of the rest of this roster and how ready they are to be winning games, putting themselves in those playoff conversations?
I like it a lot, man. It goes back to what you were talking about with the defense that they reached. I mean, even in garbage time last year, or excuse me, not garbage time last year, garbage time the year previous, the Thunder are a tough out. Like, every single night they are playing hard ball. If SGA wasn't out there, like, they're defending their asses off, they're getting back in transition, they're hustling. That's a hard thing to do, and it's something that you shouldn't take for granted with young teams. Think about the Houston Rockets. I mean, damn. Can you get them to play defense? Like,
seriously.
It's a hard thing to do with young basketball teams, and that has never been an issue with the Thunder. That's partly why I buy in. When you have this foundation of these two guys, you don't need a whole lot else around them. And again, I wonder with how much SGA had the ball in his hands last year and how much he's going to have it in his hands this year, and with Chet now in, I wonder if we see SGA improve even more as a playmaker too. I mean, you're going to have to give him a ton of attention. I don't know if it's going to show up statistically, but that's another area of his game where I think he could even get better. In terms of talent, Lou Dort is a confusing one to me. I wonder if this team would be way better offensively without him. He was by far the league's worst at-rim finisher in the NBA. His jumper's spotty.
Spotty's generous.
Yeah, Spotty is generous. Giddey is also offensively limited a little bit in terms of scoring. He's a really good playmaker. He's a good rebounder, good decision maker. You know, I want to see him carve out his offensive and scoring role a little bit. We saw him improve a little bit last year in the mid-range. I want to see him round out that part of his game. He could unlock this team a little more with that. But the guy I really like down here, if you've been watching Nerd Sesh for the past couple months, one of my favorite players in the draft was Kason Wallace, and I think the Thunder hit an absolute home run by drafting this kid. I think day one, you give this kid 20 minutes a night, and he is going to up your bench. He's one of the guys that just works, man. He's a glue guy, you know, and I think Kason has a higher ceiling that he could reach as a scorer, as a playmaker, but point blank, he is going to be a winner and make a winning impact from day one. He's a really good pick-and-roll ball handler. He's got great pace and great feel. He's an unselfish player and playmaker. I love the way when he kicks the rock immediately, Kason is looking to relocate off ball and get to his shot. He just doesn't stop the flow of the offense. That's really invaluable. He's a good shooter. He's a good defender. He's a good playmaker and decision maker. He just helps this bench immediately from day one. And he's going to alleviate a ton of pressure off SGA with this bench unit. And that's the real appeal of him, too, is not only is he's a good secondary ball handler, he's a guy that you can play off ball to primary ball handlers, and you don't lose value because of how good of a shooter and decision maker he is. So I think there's room for improvement. There's guys that I'd like to see improve areas of their game, specifically Giddey and Dort offensively. But when you have a core like this that's going to play hard defensively, there's not a whole lot else that you need. So yeah, they limit them in terms of, I don't think the Thunder are going to come out here and win a playoff series. I would be kind of shocked if the Thunder won a playoff series, but they're going to be feisty, and I like the core around them. It's really about the strides that these guys can make during the season that are going to dictate it. But there's a lot of guys, Carson, here that swing, how good this team could be in the future. Dieng, Trey Mann, Poku, there's still a lot of room to grow for those guys, and I'm really intrigued to see what strides they can take. I bank on SGA, on Chet, on this defense being great, but if any of these young guys can make real strides, it ups what the Thunder can do in terms of their ceiling this year and moving forward in the future.
Yeah, I think Kason is also a pro-ready guy. I mean, the pick and roll playmaking, the spot-up shooting, the defense, that's a uniquely pro-ready rookie. I do want to shout out Isaiah Joe for just shooting the hell out of the ball. I mean, one of the best shooting role players in the league. And Ousmane Dieng, man, he has been really intriguing in Summer League, in preseason. It's crazy because the Thunder have accumulated so many picks. It feels like they used the 11th pick on a guy in last year's draft and everybody's already forgotten about it and moved on because there's so many shiny and exciting things going on. But first of all, his shot looks really good right now. And his pick and roll pace and his playmaking at 6'10 is really impressive. Like, he's got a wide variety of deliveries. He's deceptive. He's throwing lobs. I think he's a guy with real upside. I think he might be a really legit player. And maybe he's not the most intuitive fit right now because he sort of needs to have the ball in his hands and he's going to probably need to refine some things. But I really like the foundation of the shooting and the playmaking. So long term, he's just another dude with some real potential who they have here. My one concern out of all the things that I love about OKC and what they've built remains with Josh Giddey's long-term fit here. And I've talked about this before, but I was an early Giddey enthusiast. When he was going to go in like the 20s in the draft, I was like, oh my God, this guy is a ridiculously skilled passer and playmaker at that size. Surely he'd be great value here. Then he goes 6th in the draft and the dynamics and the expectations change a little bit. I do still think the fact that he so much needs the ball to be effective, so overwhelmingly reliant on that pick and roll creation because he can't separate athletically by himself. He needs that screen. And then is going to really struggle to score efficiently because he's not a good pull-up shooter and he's not a good rim pressure. So he relies on that touch shot making where he's solid, but that being the entire foundation of your scoring diet is just difficult. And then he doesn't fit super intuitively off ball because of his limitations as a spot up shooter, not a plus defender. This team was 10 points per 100 possessions worse with him on the floor last year. And I still think that, yes, there's an intriguing skill set because of his playmaking at that size. But to maximize your playmaking value, you have to be a real scoring threat. And to be a great offensive player, you have to be a good, efficient scorer of the basketball. And I just still have real questions about Giddey there. And I wonder, as this team turns more and more into win now mode, all right, we're damn good. We're locked and loaded. We're ready to go. If some of those concerns become more noticeable, become more emphasized, because we're not just sort of in the figuring things out mode anymore. We're in the trying to win playoff series mode.
And that's why I think the Thunder are super well equipped to build a contender really, really fast. I know that Jason, host of Hoops Tonight, he made a trade idea when we were at Summer League talking about Dame to the Thunder because of all the assets they have. Well, I mean, copy paste that to any scenario. You've got a bunch of young guys that are very intriguing that on different teams could have expanded roles to grow their game, but you also have a bevy of draft picks to offer at any given time. So, I mean, at any point during this process, when Sam Presti feels like the Thunder are, one or two moves away, you don't want to rush the timeline because if you do that, you could blow everything up and ruin it, by going in and getting the wrong player. But the Thunder have so many assets that if SGA and Chet are a strong enough championship base, if they want to make one or two moves that, thrust them into that conversation, it could happen virtually overnight. I mean, they just have so many intriguing young assets and draft picks that they're loaded. I mean, the Thunder could be contenders really, really fast. I don't know who those players are yet. I don't know what the trade looks like. I don't know what the exact move is, but the point is the Thunder have the assets in place to go out and make a big move.
And I do want to give Giddey some props because he did get better in year 2. I mean, he improved a bit as a shooter, and he did a better job of getting all the way to the rim, so he became more efficient, but he still fundamentally has a lot of those same limitations. But I love the point that you just made. They have all of the assets. I mean, not only the tangible dudes right now, but the bevy of picks, the disgusting amount of picks. Yes, if they decide that they want to turn into that gear, They absolutely can, and I think we're reaching the point where they should, because I have this as a 48-win team. I have them as my 5 seed. No, I don't think they win a playoff series this year, but I think they're a hell of a tough out. I have them matching up with the Warriors. I think they're going to defend their asses off. I think there's no answer for Shai. This team maybe doesn't have the most dynamic shooting ceiling, but it's solid. I mean, they've got really good defensive personnel, elite pick and roll creator on offense, more pick and roll finishing and shooting now, spot up shooting, better depth. Everybody is getting better just because this team is so young. They've got a great culture. They're well coached. It's going to be a really good basketball team, and they're going to take a leap from being really fun, scrappy, very solid. This was still a 40-win team last year to making a lot of people uncomfortable, making some real meaningful noise around the league. The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets.
And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October.
Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Who do you have next in this division, Logan?
Number 3 in the Northwest, I have my 10 seed sneaking in here. The Minnesota Timberwolves at 42-40. I like Minnesota, but they did exactly what I just mentioned with Oklahoma City. When you mistakenly accelerate your timeline and you go in on the wrong asset, you can cost yourself dearly, right? A couple years ago, you would have said the Timberwolves are the most promising team in all of basketball. They've got this young phenom in Anthony Edwards, who's an athletic freak. He's got, shooting upside, defensive upside, playmaking upside. He could be a generational prospect. And you've got Karl Anthony Towns, who was, again, we're not that far away. 5 to 6 years ago, Karl Anthony Towns was the consensus number 1 guy to build a franchise around by front office execs.
Was he really?
Ryan Russillo did a great breakdown today. We do the GM poll every year where they poll all the different GMs on all these different categories, best player, guy you'd start your franchise with. I mean, I believe Karl Anthony Towns for 2 to 3 years running was the number 1 guy to build a franchise around. You saw it. The playmaking chops, the creation, the pure shooting that you've never seen from a big man. So a couple years ago, you would have said, oh man, let me buy Minnesota Timberwolves stock really low now. They're going to be great in a couple years. They've got, 2 of the top 10 guys you'd want to build a franchise around. Well, then they made the worst trade of all time. Maybe not the worst trade ever. There's been some historically bad ones, the Babe Ruth trade. We've seen some bad ones.
We're going cross sports.
Yeah.
I would say NBA, Olden Polonies for Scottie Pippen draft day pretty much straight up. That's a pretty tough one.
I think that one's
Kareem trade was pretty bad. Junior Bridgman, Dave Myers, Brian Winters, those guys moving the needle for you. They were all right, but they weren't Kareem.
The Bill Russell trade too,
Yeah,
there's been some candidates. There's been some bad ones. In the modern era, the Rudy Gobert one is one of the worst of all time. And that ultimately handcuffs them from being legit contenders despite how talented I think Anthony Edwards is and how much I love him. I love Ant. Ant is one of my handful of favorite players to watch in the league, and I think we're going to see him take even another leap this season. Last season, he was 25, 6-4 on 46, 37, 76 splits, and in the little bit of playoff burn that we saw him 5 games, he was 32, 5-5 on 48, 35 splits, knocking down all kinds of tough pull-up jump shots, really showing his playmaking and ball handling chops. I think Ant's going to be even better this year. I think we're going to see a career year from him in terms of pull-up jump shooting, in terms of playmaking and decision-making, in terms of defense. Is it really going to matter that much? No, probably not, because the Timberwolves have handcuffed them to this disastrous Rudy Gobert contract. Karl Anthony Towns looks like a shell of himself for a few reasons. I think it's one, a confidence thing. I think two, it's you took him out of his natural position. I think Towns and Edwards really complemented each other when he played the 5 spot. I think a part of the Rudy Gobert misstep wasn't just getting Gobert, and he's an aging guy, and you have to pay him all this money, and he's not the defensive player that he once was, and he's an offensive zero. The offensive zero part is the where you shot yourself in the foot. With Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, sure, you might not have a lockdown 5 guy. You might not have a guy who's great on the glass, but you've got a guy who spaces the floor, opens up everything for everybody else. He's got playmaking chops. You can run inverted pick and roll for him. Your offense is so much more dynamic with Towns at the 5, and I think we've seen that in games that Gobert has missed. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying that Towns and Gobert can't work together. We've seen them work okay together. But the goal is not to have guys work okay together. They're to work seamlessly together and to go win a title. So that ultimately limits them because they're never going to be a great defense with Towns at the 4, and they're never going to be a great offense with Gobert at the 5. That's the frustrating thing, especially when you have a premier young talent like Anthony Edwards. So as much as I like the young assets here, Carson, and there's a lot of guys that I do like here. I think Mike Conley is a massive get for Minnesota, and I think he's going to make their half-court offense a lot better. He's a really good, stable decision maker. He's huge for this team. But it's not going to make a difference because I just think that this formula is not going to work. With Gobert at the 5, with Towns not reaching his apex, with him playing the 4, with him crumbling on big stages, the Timberwolves just aren't going to be able to break through that barrier until they tear this down. And it's going to be really hard. Like, what the Timberwolves need to have happen, because they gave away a bunch of future draft capital for Gobert, like, you are crossing your fingers on Jaden McDaniels taking an offensive leap. You are crossing your fingers on Leonard Miller being a legit guy that you can bank on in the future, being a star. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. You don't have a ton of future assets. You're handcuffed to Towns and to Rudy Gobert. You're not going to get a ton of great value back from them. You are hoping that you can turn chicken salad into you-know-what.
Oh.
I mean, they just don't have a ton outside where they can go out and get a second superstar for Ant. I think that's what they need, man. I don't know how you get from point A to point B with the surrounding assets here until you get off the Gobert contract.
And they're not getting off the Gobert contract. This just in, nobody wants to pay Rudy Gobert $47 million in 2026. Yeah, I mean, that trade was a disaster. The fit is bad, and what's so painful is the Timberwolves marginally improved defensively after the Gobert trade while falling off a cliff offensively because, yes, Towns is not a good defensive 5. Sometimes maybe it's exaggerated how bad he is. He's definitely below average, and it's tough to win a title with a below average defensive center. But what I think was lost is how good some of the defensive personnel that they then lost out on was in that 2022 season, right? A wing core of McDaniels, of Pat Bev, of Jared Vanderbilt. D'Lo was playing some of the better defense of his career at that point. And Gobert just regressed a little bit individually. So to just have that marginal defensive improvement and then to have that just total misfit on the interior take you from a top 10 offense to the number 23 offense, that hurts. Of course, they also didn't have Cat for so much of last year. He played 29 games. But you do see it. Like, Cat went from being one of the most efficient isolation players in basketball to a 36th percentile one. And definitely part of that is he has such a tremendous ability to initiate from the perimeter. He's got, of course, the lethal shooting ability. So he can get you with that pump and go and then get into the lane, and he can kill you with the little floater range stuff. Or he can just straight up take smaller wings, abuse that mismatch with physicality, then get into the lane. And that's a lot harder when Rudy Gobert is on your team and he's in there. And if he tries to get out of the way, well, nobody really cares because he's Rudy Gobert. That just is crushing to the spacing, and it hurts Cat's offensive effectiveness. And yes, he is a special shooter, but he can't get into the teeth of the defense as much with Gobert out there, which hurts his playmaking. It hurts, obviously, the overall spacing and shooting ceiling that the team has. And yeah, they never got to build any sort of rhythm last year. Maybe the fit can be slightly better, but the fundamental issues to me are not being corrected. Cat cannot play alongside a 5 offensively, or not a 5 like this, right? If you could put him with Miles Turner and have a big who can stretch the floor and be that great rim protector, now we're talking. But Rudy Gobert is not that at all. Together, when they were on the floor, they had a net rating of plus 0.6 last year. It just sucks. I mean, they were a totally average basketball team. But things can't go worse than last year. Because that fit was new, because of Cat's injuries, And because I think that now this team is actually more talented. Conley is an upgrade. I think he's a great fit. I love his pick and roll and playmaking presence. Jaden is an elite defender, one of my favorite prospects in his draft, who's coming off a great shooting season, just an awesome, awesome role player. Gobert is still a good defensive anchor. He is not what he was in Utah, where he could cover up for really mediocre perimeter defense and still make you the best in the league, but he's still good. And Cat is still an offensive star. I mean, he is still one of the great shooting bigs we've ever seen and one of the best playmaking bigs in the NBA today. But the biggest reason that I do think this team will trend upwards, despite this sort of air of negativity around them, because long term, yeah, they made this horrible misstep, is because of Ant. I think that Ant, first of all, already was special last year, but if you look at some of the stuff he did for Team USA, he showed more variety as a scorer. We saw some more of the touch shot making from him, the floaters and runners, more mid-range pull-ups. That's always been missing from his game. He has been pretty much get to the rim or shoot a pull-up three, really struggles from the intermediate range. I still need to see his touch improve. I just don't think that comes really natural to him, but it was progress. I think we saw his playmaking improve from last year and continue into Team USA. Hitting more pocket passes, some really nice drive and kick stuff. He's becoming more deceptive as a passer. He already took a defensive leap last year and became a real impact guy there. Continued to get better as a shooter last year. Always is going to be totally unstoppable attacking the rim. And the playoffs, before Team USA, he was unbelievable in that series against the Nuggets. Put up 32, 5, and 5 on 60% true shooting with 4 stocks a game, balling out defensively, relentless rim pressure, good pull-up shooting, good playmaking. He is just becoming a complete superstar right in front of our eyes. It is no longer, oh my God, what an athlete Anthony Edwards is, what a player he is going to be. No, he's becoming that player. He is continuing to refine all of the edges to add the dimensions to his game that are necessary for it to translate across matchups, across multiple playoff series. I buy into him. I buy into him as a future scoring champion, a future MVP contender, and I think he'll be all NBA this year. And I think that there's too much talent around him, regardless of fit, for them to just crawl in to the play-in or the playoffs like last year. I have them winning 47 games. I have them as my 6th seed. I think this is a really good starting 5 with a pair of star talents. I do still believe in Cat. I understand that a lot of people are down on Cat, and I do think part of that is a product of expectations, but he's a pretty damn good second option, and Ant is that man. And because of that, I do think things will get better. Again, they can't really get worse.
There are a lot of other guys here that I like too, Carson, when you talk about that talent. One of my favorites from what I've seen in the preseason, Nikola Alexander Walker, hasn't got a ton of burn elsewhere. I really think he's going to be a good playmaker and ball handler off the bench in preseason, showing off some of his feel out of the pick and roll, making good decisions. He's a decent scorer too. I think Shake Milton is a good addition. Like, ball handling off the bench has been a real issue for Minnesota. Was a real issue last year. I don't think it's going to be a problem this year. I think Milton and Alexander Walker can do a pretty good job. Naz Reid is awesome off the bench. They bring him back. He's sick, man. A 6'9", 260 center. Got handle, got feel, got touch. He's a cool asset. I think you might be right, man. I think I might be a little low on Minnesota. And maybe it's my pessimism for the future just because I know that this team can't win a title like this, and that's why I am a little lower on them. But this team really is talented, and I'm wondering if maybe I should make some adjustments. I'll keep them here at my 10 spot, but this does feel a little low at 42 wins for them. This is an extremely talented team, and I wonder if Ant is just going to will them into that, over 45 tier.
I mean, again, dude, you think about everything that went wrong last year, the injuries, the complete lack of synergy, having to deal with that fit being new. And then, of course, in the playoffs, they're down both McDaniels and Naz Reid, two of their best role players. Like, God just didn't want them to have a good year, and long-term, the same issues are there, but I do think they'll take a step forward. I don't love the depth here, but, I mean, Naz Reid is first-team all-sick. You mentioned it, bro. Like, the in and outs. I mean, the heads, he's something different with the athleticism, the handling, the shot. I do think he gets overrated, and I hate to say this, I hate to do this, but this happens with guys. It's like you find a diamond in the rough, and then you keep on hyping him up, and the highlight reel is sick. the highlight reel with Naz Reid is better than what he really is, mostly because he really, really struggles defensively. But hey, he's fun. He's a really good backup big. Kyle Anderson, I think, is still a winning basketball player. I am intrigued in Leonard Miller long term. I've liked what I've seen from him in Summer League preseason. I liked him as a prospect, too. I thought he was a good value pick at 33rd, I believe. They got him. I mean, he's a really good athlete. I just don't think he's going to play that much this year. So there's no path to contention here. There's still too many exploitable pieces. Cat has still been too inconsistent offensively on the playoff stage, and especially next to Gobert. That's not ideal. And there are still teams that will be able to go small and, well, it's tough when you have the two big looks, but teams that will have the requisite shooting to expose Gobert in space, and there will be series where he disappears offensively. The bench isn't enough of a strength. It's like they have too many issues to be in that tier, but they should be a legitimately good basketball team, and I hope that they get some positive momentum going. I hope that Cat has a bit of a bounce-back year. I hope that Ant continues to progress, and I'm pretty damn confident that he will. Okay, who do you have next in this division, Logan?
I have got the Utah Jazz pulling into my fourth spot here in this division. I have them going 39 and 43. They are my 11 seed. And, yeah, man, the Jazz are a tough team. I like a lot of the young talent here. I just don't know if it's going to translate to wins. Lauri Markkanen was a first-time All-Star last year, balled out of control, man. I mean, just showed us a lot that he hadn't. I mean, we already knew he was a great catch and shooter, a good spot-up guy, but I mean, he was showing us a little bit off the dribble, handling, getting downhill into the lane a little more. I was really impressed with Lauri. I was pretty low on him. I mean, he averaged over 25 a night last season on nearly 50% from the field and 39% from deep. Markkanen's really good. I did not expect that. You were on early in the season, Carson, with the Markkanen hype. I didn't buy in. I've always been a little skeptical, but
he's the man.
Dude, the finished firearm, man. That guy is different, dude. Yeah, do I really like him as a number one, as a leader? Look, if he continues to put up 25 a night, yeah, I'll buy in. But
yes,
I was really surprised at the leap he took last season. Colin Sexton's pretty cool coming off is another ball handler here. I really like the young guys that they added, though, and that's what I'm most excited with for Utah, especially with how we saw them run their offense. Utah likes running that 5-out, heavy spacing. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it opens up the floor for everybody to attack, and they've got a ton of shooting. I'm really excited with the addition of Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George. I think those were massive gets in the draft. I had them as I believe my 9 and 10 guys on my big board, if I'm not mistaken. Or they were both lottery, near the 10 spot, both of them. I'm not sure exactly where they were, but Hendricks is going to be really cool. I hope they start him alongside Markkanen from day one. I think he's going to be a really good pick-and-roll threat, pick-and-popper defender. Like, he's a glue guy. You know, I think he's a guy that you can stick alongside Markkanen, two really long, rangy wings who can shoot. Hendricks is way more of an athlete. I think he'll be able to attack off of closeouts, off spot-ups. And I think he's going to defend and rebound really well immediately from the jump. So he's a massive get. And then Keontae George, I don't know how much burn he gets off rip, considering that he's going to be behind Colin Sexton, probably going to be behind Jordan Clarkson. I think Keontae George has star upside, man. I loved him in the pre-draft process, and I'm a little bit worried about him in terms of efficiency and, you know, his shot selection, because he's a guy who's really reliant on pull-up shooting, on deep threes. Not a crazy athlete where he's going to get to the rim a ton, but he's got great touch, and I trust him in the mid-range. So I'm really excited to watch these young guys play. But I'm banking on this team being good, being a little bit better defensively. This team tried last year. They were 23rd in defensive rating. I think they can be a little bit better there this year, especially with Walker Kessler anchoring them in the middle. So I'm expecting them to be an average defense and a slightly above average offense. Wow. That's why I have them at 39 wins. They're not over the top. I still think they're a year away. You know, I think they need to see George or Hendricks or somebody take a leap for them to be better. But I like the Jazz a lot. They're going to try hard every night, and I think they're building towards something greater. I like a lot of the young guys here. John Collins is here this year. I don't really know what that means. I don't really like John Collins as an asset. I wouldn't have picked him up, but he's here. That's cool. I like a lot of the young talent here in Utah, and I'm really excited to watch them this year.
I don't know if there's a team that I progressively got lower on the more that I thought about it
Wow.
than the Jazz. And I love the foundation in their front court. I'm just talking about specifically for this year. Is there a worse backcourt in the NBA than
I
what
don't
the
know,
Jazz are
man.
going to trot out there?
It's bad, dude. That's why I wonder, like, I don't know, dude. You just give Keontae George burn like off rip. Mike Conley was imperative to this team, dude.
Absolutely. And it's not just Conley. He absolutely was imperative as the capable decision maker, pick and roll facilitator. The totality of what they lost at the deadline. I mean, Malik Beasley's off-ball shooting was super valuable. Jared Vanderbilt was a real quality role player there. Like, I kept thinking, the Jazz were so solid last year. Now they have Taylor Hendricks. Like, are they really going to fall off a cliff? Because I love what Laurie did. I think Walker Kessler's really legit. Taylor Hendricks is one of my favorite picks in the draft. I love that man. But it's like they've lost a lot. They were really solid when Laurie played last year. They were 32 and 34. They had a +3 net rating when he was on the floor, and they were 10 points per 100 better with him out there versus when he wasn't out there. They were 10 and 16 after they made their trade, but they were still 7 and 8 when Laurie was on the floor, 3 and 8 without him. But the splits there are pretty crazy. They were the number 4 offense before the trades, then they were the number 24 offense after. That is missing Laurie for half of those games, but nevertheless, Conley was a very important presence there. Now you get really sketchy decision-making from Jordan Clarkson, from THT, from Sexton. They're all inconsistent there. Mostly all inconsistent perimeter shooters. Sexton had a good year, but he's not a real high-volume three-point shooter. So Keontae's been hooping, and we talked about him as a prospect. The range of outcomes was very wide because of his dynamic perimeter shot creation, because of the flashes of playmaking. It was just he didn't have the highest floor because he didn't have great defensive tools. He wasn't a guy who could consistently get into the painted area. Wasn't a real plus athlete. Wasn't great dealing with physicality in there. But the stuff he could do as a perimeter shot maker, it's really, really impressive. And yeah, he's been hooping. And I do hope that he can establish himself as a cornerstone here. But either way, I don't know how much he's going to play this year. So I think it's the worst backcourt in the league. And that is the reason that I progressively got lower on them. Markkanen is him, dude. I think Markkanen is probably a top 25 player, and if not very close to it, I think he's definitely better than Karl Anthony Towns right now, just making a comparison within the division. There is a level of offensive versatility as a scorer that is nuts. We talked about the efficiency throughout play types last year, but 89th percentile spot up, 80th percentile transition, 76th percentile off screen, 84th percentile pick and roll, man. He is an unbelievable pure shooter. He's an extremely fluid ball handler for his size. He is aggressive coming downhill. He embraced physicality last year. I mean, he can do it off movement with contests. He's just a bucket. He is one of the purest buckets in the league right now. And yeah, he doesn't have great playmaking to go with it, but when you put him with a really good guard and he can just be that assassin, I mean, that's an incredible combination. That's just one of my concerns here is the table setters. The table setters are desperately missing from this team, but I do think that Walker Kessler is a great rim protector, and their defense was actually above average with him on the floor last year. So starting for a full season, I think he's going to be a really good foundational piece. And Hendricks is a guy who brings great defensive traits, can defend multiple positions, brings real secondary rim protection, very good positional rebounder, and then offensively can be a pick and pop big, can bully mismatches out of the post, is a good spot up shooter. Like, he's not going to do crazy advanced stuff in terms of creation, but he's going to fill a role at a really high level. So that front court is big, it's athletic, they have shooting, they have two-way upside. I really like that, and especially going forward because they are so young. But I think that Hendricks and Kessler both have like the ability to contribute now. I think they have those skill sets. But when you are starved for offensive skill in the backcourt, and I mean defense is going to be probably worse in the backcourt, it really, really knocks them down a peg for me. I have them winning just 26 games. I actually have them last in the West. I know. I didn't think that I would have them that low either, but the more I looked at it, that is a glaring weakness that is difficult to overcome.
And it's not like they even have depth guys that can step up and fill in. You know what I mean? I really do like Utah's front court for the future. I mean, I think this is something that you can build on for years to come with
Yeah.
Markkanen, Hendricks, Kessler, all of those guys, super versatile offensively, super long, good defenders. Like Markkanen's not a great defender, but he's long enough to
He's
where
solid.
he can cover up a lot of space. So I think they do have their front court for the future. Maybe I'm taking Conley for granted a little bit in the offensive scheme. That's the one thing because I do think this backcourt sucks. And that could be a real problem, man. Like in the half court, just who do you turn to? That is a worry of mine. I expect this team to be a lot better defensively, though, and I think that matters.
Interesting. I think
at least
they
average,
will be
you know
better
what I mean?
there. Yeah, maybe. I think that the bench unit's really going to struggle. I think they're going to be terrible at the point of attack. I think that's putting a lot on Kessler, who's good, and rookie Hendricks, who I think is a really good defensive prospect, but rookies generally are just a little bit tough to bank on. I think he'll be good, but I don't think it's a good all-around defense. And, I mean, the other front court guys, first of all, actually, I don't know if Hendricks is going to play as much as I would like him to because of John Collins, who I think is going to have a rude awakening without Trae Young, because we saw some really disturbing regression from him as a shooter last year. He was 29% from deep. And when he isn't having lobs spoon-fed to him by the best lob thrower in basketball, one of the best pick-and-roll playmakers in basketball, I mean, what is John Collins going to do? He's just athletic. He's athletic, but he doesn't have a playmaker to set him up. So I think he's going to have a bad year. He's not good defensively, and he's going to suck up minutes. Kelly Olynyk just had a great year. I'm happy for him, but he's going to be coming off the bench. It's just not as good a team as I hoped it would be after they got off to such a great start last year and they were so competitive, and I think Will Hardy's a great coach and Laurie had his breakout, but I don't see it. I don't see them being really in the play-in conversation this year.
I'm going to call an audible, bro.
Audible! Omaha!
Alert. I'm going to bump them down 6, actually. I'm going to give it out. There's
wow.
Just the discrepancy. I realized I gave the Blazers almost no wins, too. I need to bump their record up a little bit. I had them in the trenches.
Yeah. I think a team like Portland, I mean, they don't have Lauri Markkanen, but they do have a lot more overall talent, I think.
And I've got them at... This feels really low, man. The bottom of the West is really hard to predict. And like you've been saying all preview series long, too, Carson, damn, the league is so talented, dude. It's hard picking out who's going to suck. I have the Blazers pulling up the rear. I'm not super confident in this at 26 and 56, but they are a talented team, man. I mean, you've got Ayton and Robert Williams here, which if they keep both of them, should give them a borderline really, good defensive floor. Where, I can't imagine them being horrible. Both of those guys, well, Rob's a tremendous defender. Ayton at least is going to be, he's going to be a big body that can take up space and get rebounds. He's not a good defender. Obviously, the most fun part of this is going to be watching all the young talent here in Portland that they got. Scoot Henderson, I think, is phenomenal. I think he's going to be great as a rookie. You look at his athletic tools, man. Freak athlete, crazy bounce, crazy first step, good change in pace, good defender. And I think I was critical of his pull-up jump shooting and his touch. I think he's a little more advanced in that area than I previously thought in the pre-draft process. I think he's going to be inefficient, obviously, but I think he's going to be okay there his rookie year. He's going to be a good playmaker. Eventually, Scoot is going to be one hell of a defensive collapser and a guy that you can lean on. And around him, Ant Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, it's one of the most fun young trios in all of basketball. Ant Simons has been on one all preseason long. One of your favorite guys, Carson. I don't know how much meaningfully better he can be than last year. I mean, it was really efficient, real breakout season for him. I want to ask you, Carson, as a guy that's been following Simon since he came out of the draft, where do you expect him to take a leap this year if he does take one?
I don't know that I expect him to take a leap in terms of skill. I expect him to take a leap in terms of production because we've seen that happen every time that Dame has been out. 2 years ago, he went from being a dude in like the mid-teens to suddenly dropping 24 a night. And then last year, he was dropping 27 points and 6 assists a night without Dame and doing so efficiently. He's maintained his efficiency. So if it were to be anywhere, it would probably be in his ability to pressure the rim, where he got a little bit better last year, but still doesn't attack that restricted area very much. But he's a lethal pull-up shooter. I think playmaking would be the other area you would look at. He already has grown a bit there. Is a score-first player, but an improved playmaker. But he's going to put up big-time numbers because you put the ball in his hands enough, I mean, he is going to just make it rain. He's got an awesome floater. He's got a good mid-range game. He's just an incredibly skilled perimeter shot maker.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this trio figure it out. But I say figure it out because I think there's going to be some growing pains. In terms of floor spacing with Ayton, Scoot, and Shaden, I'm a little concerned there just in terms of...
Shaden can spray that thing.
Shaden's cool. I'm worried about...
Shaden can spray that thing.
Can he? Is he wet like that, man?
Yeah, I mean, he shot like 40% from deep last year.
Did she?
Almost.
That's ridiculous.
No, sorry. Okay, it was actually 36%, but I believe in his shooting ceiling a lot.
I believe in his shooting ceiling, too. I think there's going to be growing pains in terms of spacing, like I said, with Rob or Ayton, too. I think that's just what comes with the territory. And on the other side of the ball, you know, Ayton and Williams are going to be able to be good defensively, but there's not really any great point of attack guys here in the starting lineup. Like, down the lineup, I mean, you got Matisse Thybulle here. He should be really effective, you know, on the defensive side of the ball if they play him, yeah. Jeremy Grant's not a great defender, so I wonder if they struggle there. But there's a lot of young guys that I'm interested in here, man. Scoot, Shaden. I like Ryan Rupert out of the draft a little bit. I think he's pretty raw offensively.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued at what he brings to the table defensively. This is a year to grow and figure out what they've got. And like I said, I think when you've got a rookie guard here who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, with Shaden figuring it out as the season goes along, I think there's going to be some growing pains. And I don't expect them to be great defensively. I expect them to be okay there. So I have them in my 15 spot at 26 and 56. And this is tough, man. I don't want to pick any of these teams to bring up the rear. And I think that, I don't know, man, this might be one of the most talented Wests of my lifetime. You know, I know the late 2000s were loaded. This West is insane, dude.
It is. It's, I mean, at least 11 deep with, like, legit playoff caliber teams. The Blazers, I think, are going to be pretty explosive offensively because I think that we saw Ant. I mean, they were perfectly capable offensively when he was at the helm last year. They have good spacing. They have athletic finishers. I mean, they've got some dudes who can explode there. Once Ant was basically done for the year, and Jeremy Grant, like when the Blazers were in full tank mode, Shaden Sharp the last 10 games averaged 24 a night on 38% from deep. I mean, he does have this incredible blend of athleticism and shooting ability from deep, where I think that he needs to certainly become a more well-rounded offensive player in terms of playmaking, in terms of the intermediate game, the pace. But those two things mean that on any given night you can have an explosion, and especially when you're playing alongside a guy like Scoot, who is going to pressure the rim and is a really good playmaker, and you're playing alongside a dude who is going to demand the sort of attention as a pull-up shooter that Ant Simons does. It's going to be fun. Jeremy Grant, good mismatch attacker, coming off of a good shooting season. I think offensively, like, they can easily be average and might be above average. Like, yeah, Scoot's going to have the ball in his hands, and maybe he's not the most refined and efficient as a rookie, and yeah, there's going to be pull-up shooting inconsistency, and he may barrel his way into the rim a lot, and he'll finish a decent amount of those, but it's not going to be great offense. But I just think Ant is going to be the primary engine here, and my concern is really about the defense. I don't think this is going to be an average defense. I don't think it's going to be all that close. I mean, I don't see a plus defender in the starting five. DeAndre Ayton is not a plus defender to me. The Suns' defense somehow has been worse with him for 3 straight years, and that is with very, very sketchy backup bigs. I mean, there's too many lapses in effort, too many positional errors. Too often he is not just mentally primed to play with the physicality that he needs to. He just is
soft.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't play up to his potential really ever on that side of the floor, outside of course, the finals run, which is good, and maybe he becomes dominating. Maybe he lives up to the tattoo because now he's been spurned and he's no longer in Phoenix, but I wouldn't expect it. So I think they're going to struggle defensively. But, I mean, the second unit, dude, they have Brogdon and Robert Williams coming off the bench. Those are winning basketball players. Those are dudes who contenders want. And if they hold on to them, I mean, that's going to buy them a few wins this year. Chris Murray, I think, is a very pro-ready rookie. We talked about how much I like his variety as a shot maker. I mean, he's a good spot-up guy, but he can also attack mismatches out of the post, good mid-range shooter, very good defensive skill set, super high floor guy to me. So there's just too much talent for them to suck. Like, again, I sort of thought going into the predictions that I would have the Jazz above them because of what they already accomplished last year, because of Markkanen and because of how much I like that front court overall. But, I mean, again, with the Jazz, it's like you're looking at like 4 dudes who you like, and then everything else is and basically the entire guard situation is Here, it's like, all right, they got 7 legit basketball players, and they've got a lot of dudes who can light it up. And it's not perfect, and maybe it's not the most cohesive, but I do think that that offensive production is going to give them a floor to where I have them as a 30-win team, a little bit better than you and better than the Jazz.
And they're going to be a ton of fun to watch, man. I mean, this is going to be a team that you tune into. I think you're right, dude. Explosivity. And Aiden's got to figure it out, man. It's gut check time for Aiden.
Yeah.
I want to see him improve. Just all the raw talent that we saw. There was a reason he was the number 1 pick, man. The flashes of, athleticism, the jump shot, the floor spacing, and I want to see a different kind of physical aggression. I want to see the beast break out of DeAndre Ayton, man. And I know he's got to be in there. I hope that Portland is the wake up call that he needs, because I still like Aiden's profile. He just hadn't shown us it on the court.
That's interesting, because I really am pretty much off Aiden. I mean, and a change in situation can really change a guy's approach, but I just think at that contract, it's going to be tough to justify. Like, I was thinking about him versus Zubats because they played each other in a series last year. There's nothing that Ayton does better than Zubats right now. I mean, Ayton does not finish around the rim at the level that you would want him to because of his tendencies to settle for those sort of short-range touch shots. And then Zubats is way more physical offensively. He's better at those shots. He's a better rim protector. He's a better rebounder. And Zubats isn't a guy who a lot of people talk about around the league. He's a really good basketball player. Ayton, I mean, he got the contract because, of course, of his status as a draft pick and because of the potential that he showed at times. But now, where he's at in his career, I just don't buy it. And I don't think that this is a team that is built to play the ultimate winning basketball. I think that Ant Simons, as much as I love him, still has real problems defensively, and this whole team does, and that's going to hold them back. But they're too good to totally suck, I think. But you can talk yourself into that with a lot of teams in the NBA today, and somebody does have to suck, as we've talked about before, because everybody has players that you really, really like, and that is the blessing of 2023 basketball, but it's also the curse of having to do predictions where these teams somehow have to end up with an even record overall, and you want them to be 100 games over that. So that does it. We have now previewed every team in every division for this season. Next week, we are going to be doing our award picks and our official power rankings for the top of the league, where we'll go a bit more into how we think all of these teams project to the playoff stage and our official title picks and whatnot. So look forward to that. And, of course, look forward to our NFL content that's coming up. We still have a lot of football to talk about this weekend. So we're going to be doing it all. And if you want to catch it all, subscribe to the Volume YouTube page for all the Nerd Sesh shows with video. You can also listen to the show across audio platforms. You can follow us across social. TikTok at Nerd Sesh. Instagram is the same handle. Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can also join our Discord. That is the link tree across our social media bios if you want to talk basketball, football, be part of our community. And you can buy some Nerd Sesh merch. Logan's got the hat there. We've got the flags behind us. He's got the shirt too. Bro is decked out. We've got hoodies. So you can find all of that at thevolume.com. And with that, as always, I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.